Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of why the heck do I do this, and why the heck do I make reaction videos at all? Why do people make reaction videos? Period. But anyways, I am reacting to Sorhands, Bach Sonata, number 1, 1001, Adagio. What can I say about this recording and of the way that Cameron played this piece? It is so good and fantastic and so dense compared to the last time we heard this Adagio that I thought for many minutes, possibly hours across many days, what is there something about Cameron's play that I can comment on? So that is how good this recording is I had to dig deep to figure out if there was anything worth saying in this video. And so I wouldn't make it unless I found something. So here we go. So there are three things, maybe 3.5 things. We'll see. What was the first thing? What was the second thing? Alright, so the second thing, we'll get back to the first thing once I remember. The second thing, I remember the first thing. Sorry. Okay. So the first thing is really look at every single trill and ask if it should be a low trill or a high trill. What does that mean? Do you start from the top note and then trill, or the note then trill? In your play, it sounds like your standard is the note then trill, but the conventions of Bach and Baroque, you always start from the top note. And so Adagio is kind of really for the enthusiasts, right? And enthusiasts would pay attention to that. I'm just saying. So keep in mind that Baroque conventions, the trills start from the top note down. But it's not always applicable, as I'll explain later on. But it's very important to examine every trill where there's a repeated note. So let's say you have a D and then a D trill. Usually that means start from the higher note. But we'll see examples where that's not always a rule that you need to follow, but it's fairly clear that you're starting from the note in a lot of these places. Second point is whenever there is a tie of a note into the next beat, whether it be the next 8th note, the next 16th note, the next 32nd note, or whatever, it needs to be very clear that the next beat has started before you play. So in this recording, there will be a couple of times where it's a little borderline of it's on the beat. It started on the beat and slightly after the beat. But I think it needs to be very clear that it's 1, da 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 da. And it's hard to do on the guitar because there's nothing happening during those ties, right? No extra sound, nothing. Pluck, you're done, right? So how do you indicate when the beat has been done and that you're intentionally waiting for the next beat? I don't know. But I'm going to point out times where I think things should be very clear that a beat has passed before you start playing again. The third thing is about rhythm exactness. In Bach's time, the idea of steady beat, I don't know if that existed at the time. But at the very least, Bach was very transformative in the way he conducts in 4 and in 3. So I think he's kind of the first one that really was the standard for conducting. And keep in mind that that's the focus, is the beat and the pulse. And sometimes these relationships are not exactly by a factor of a half, you know? It's not always an 8th, 16th, 32nd, 64th, right? It could be a blend that maintains the relationship between the different rhythms relatively, but not absolutely within the lattice of halves, right? It's not like an 8th, 16th, 32nd, 64, right? The increments are a little, maybe more organic. So I'll also point out times where I feel like my play, and sometimes your play as well, gets too mathematic, and just kind of wondering, how do we make this less calculated, right? So those are the three things. And then I'll talk about the 3.5 thing later on, but that's enough of me talking. Let me go over this recording and talk to you about what I just said. It's a dense work, so some of this stuff might come up very quickly. So let's see how it goes. Oh, and of course, if you want to support Cameron, you're watching this video, you don't know who he is, all the information about his channel is on the screen. So please go check his channel out, subscribe, support him in every way. He deserves it. All right, here we go. Great. So, fantastic intro. Oh, captures that piece really well. Gonna point out our first trill example came up already. That's what you do. Convention says da 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 da. So start from that E when you start that trill. So so we've already passed a piece where it seems like too much math is happening. Right here. That's what's on the page, right? But I wonder if more artistry can go behind that, right? So that's just an example of how does the way that Western music and the way that we count quavers and semiquavers and so on and so forth, how does that influence our way of creating more fluid art that's more like water, right? Rather than like building blocks, like a log cabin, right? Okay. So right there is the first tie that I felt like it was on the beat, rather than da 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 da. You know, clearly after the start of the next eighth note, right? And I'll note so far that I never really pointed out the other trills because it kind of sounds like naturally when you play it on the guitar, naturally the top note comes out first. I just want you to be aware and question every trill to see, is it necessary, is it appropriate? And it's not always. It's up to taste as well. So let me just play that again. That's the thing, is like when I'm carefully paying attention to your playing, I can tell. But I'm just thinking, what if that tie was slightly longer and that the rest of the notes are slightly shorter, indicating really clearly it's not on the beat. It's always leaning towards and anticipating the next beat and tripping. You know, there's a lot of tripping in this whole piece. So here is my 3.5 point is, and in my previous video reaction on the fugue, I brought this up, is a little bit more of a B, 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 B. So where is that right there? So if you can kind of emphasize that first beat, it adds to the style, you know? Comes up again a little bit. A little emphasis on the first note. Another trill that could have started on the dun, 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 starting from the top note. One thing is that that note is twice as long as what you're playing, I believe. One, two, da 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 da. So you're playing that as an eighth note, but that needs to be a quarter note. Really, that quarter note comes out of nowhere, right? It's twice as long as you would want it to be. But anyways. Alright. Excellent moment. This is a moment where you just showed, I know this piece. I have like rubbed myself into this. I have control over the piece. I have control over the time. And now the question is, and it's evident everywhere. That's what makes this recording so great. But I think there are still inconsistencies, pockets where you can. Again, this goes to the exactness of the rhythms a little bit, and the use of rubato and the control of time is that how can you have that level of control and intention in every single measure, right? So how do we get this level of intensity in every measure? So we can kind of group this between the dun 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 dun. So there's the first part and the second part. And the in-betweeners, it gets a little complicated. It's easier to lose a little bit of your direction until the second dun 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 dun. So I already think you're doing great. It's just this is the golden standard. Kind of like a climax, right? Kind of a climax, but I think this Adagio is so epic that you can have your climax happening at any measure. And that's the idea. Is you got to make the audience feel like the measure is the next one, That the best measure is always the next one. And how do you create that anticipation in an audience in a piece that is, again, only for enthusiasts? Really. I love how you ended that. Da, 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 da. It almost feels like you're stealing my moves, but at the same time, you're the only person I listen to in terms of the Adagio. So to be fair, I just stole your moves. Right there was another mathematical, calculated thing. Is how do we get away from the calculation? It really is a lot about this conceptualization that each of these little blah, 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 are words, and that some of these things are just spelled out grace notes to a greater, bigger note. In every grace note you get a quarter and then the little blip right in front of it, and it just tells you already what the main note is, right? So if we had to rewrite this instead of a complete spelled out version and we wrote it out with intense grace notes, what is the base main note that we're trying to grace over? A little bit of that perspective can help you decide, where the words begin and end. So, what we just passed is the first and only syncopated measure in the whole Adagio. And I think that deserves something more. So again, dum, be, be, dun, dun. I wonder what it would sound like if you just slurred that. No strumming. In all of these, like each of the B yums, I wonder if you can just do that completely slurred. I think that's how I would want to hear it. Dun 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 dun. So really make sure that those syncopations are very special, because it's the only one. Do you have the audacity to play the last one, the last trill of the whole Adagio, starting from the top note? Do you have the audacity to go da dia da da instead of da 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 da? Is it required? I think it's a statement. And it's kind of interesting how you don't even pick that one, even though you literally pick every single other slur trills. So that's why I asked you the question, is like, do you have the bravery to show that, hey, I do know how Bach and Baroque music goes, these are just ideas for you that I want you to be aware of, because I'm not sure if you were conscious of some of those stylistic decisions. And really, you don't have to kind of adhere to this romantic idea of absolute rhythm and the exactness of that the composer desires. Like during Bach's time, this was all just kind of not as rigid and calculated as post-printing press, post-engineering, getting towards the industrial age and the mechanization of everything, That just wasn't the nature of music at the time. It's way more organic. And Bach may have been the first one to really order things and put things together, but ultimately, I don't think we need to be playing like calculators. We need to be playing like artists with brushes, drawing an owl with one stroke of the brush, And if you want to take it, like a medium and say maybe we're just calligraphers and we have a big mix of the paintbrush and the exactness, you want to use both hand in hand, that's fine too. Just trying to make things a little more open for you to start experimenting more on, because as amazing as your recording was and is, I think there's more. I think there's more in this piece that you can just squeeze out, and at this point I don't think you even have to try that hard. There's still more, I think, that you can get, and so that's the reason why I made this, is that it can be even better than this. That's the amazing thing, Of all the Bach pieces that I've learned across this whole book, across all of this, honestly, page 1 has so much content, so much depth and complexity that there's no end to the amount of artistry that you can pump into this. So at the very least, I hope this is motivation or inspiration for you to keep going at this with fresh eyes, because I don't want you to look at this recording and think that this is the end. It's not going to say it's the beginning, because this is really hyper developed already, but who knows what this is going to sound like in 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, you know? And it's just a matter of this discussion is kind of just a way to help speed you up in the conversation of Bach and Baroque playing, and because I think you're kind of like a sponge when it comes to trying to learn from everybody, which is very admirable. I wish I was as much as a sponge and great as good as learning as you are. And so, yeah, no, all strength to you. Very impressed. Very, very impressed how all your Bach is just becoming more and more you. So, and I know you've been working on this for almost a year. So you've come a long ways. You know, it's not easy to get all of this whole sonata down in less than a year. That's for sure. So, hope you enjoyed it. Catch you on the next one. Talk to you soon. And everyone else that tuned in, thanks for watching. That's it for now. Hope y'all got something out of this. Alright? So until next time, your boy JY out.